So before we start, yes, it's still me. Yes, I just clean up semi-decently. Um, so you can take a sow's ear and make a polyester purse out of it, you know. And I didn't rate myself up with silk quite yet, but um, so the last week we started talking about grace, remember, and the cooperation necessary between free will and grace, that those two are inextricably linked, that you can't have one and not have the other, in opposition to the Protestant theory of grace alone. Free will is an absolutely necessary part, and therefore the works resulting from that assist me in attaining salvation, because I accomplish works because my free will cooperates with God's grace, is what it boils down to. And so, it's important for us, again, to keep in mind always that free will cooperation is absolutely necessary for grace to work in my life, for me to accomplish good things. It doesn't mean that I do something good and I tell God he owes me something because of this. When I do something good, I cooperated with God's grace. And that's the goal, is for me to cooperate with God. And so free will is absolutely necessary. Remember, we talked about also the definition of grace. The simplest, easiest to understand, best to remember definition of grace is simply, it is a free gift from God. It's that simple. It's something that God can give that we then have to respond to. Again, because nobody dies and just wakes up in heaven and be like, I'm surprised I made it here. I didn't want to go here. Why did the Lord drag me here? They end up there because they cooperate with God's grace. Just like a soul that goes to hell doesn't say, well, I wasn't supposed to be here. No, they know very well that's where they were going because they refused to cooperate with God's grace. Again, the free will is important. So, cruising on along through the idea of grace. Now, there is a whole entire part of theology dedicated to the study of grace. In Polish, it's called harytologia. In English, the proper pronunciation, in spite of what everybody says, is harytology. Haris from the Greek to mean grace, the study of grace. And like I said, it's such an important part of our faith and theology that it has its own branch of study. And so we're going to look at the two main categories of grace: actual grace and sanctifying grace. Now, if you want to get down to brass tacks, we can go on for another couple months and divide up the different categories of actual grace. Actual grace divides up into natural grace, medicinal grace, ingratiating grace, habitual grace, prevenient grace. We can keep on going for months if you'd like, but we're not going to. It's just to give you the basic idea so that we understand more or less how it all works and can see it evident in your lives. Actual grace is where we start, because actual grace is God offers to everyone. The good, the bad, and the ugly are offered actual grace. The greatest saints and the worst sinners are offered actual grace. Actual grace is just that. It's a grace that God gives me that's supposed to help me make a decision to act in a certain way, to make a certain choice. Actual activity. And so, actual grace's goal is to lead me to sanctifying grace and help me to stay there. But it's just the starting point. It is not in itself enough to save us. It's meant to get us into a pattern of life. So, actual grace. There's a lot of examples of actual grace in the scriptures. There's also quite a few examples of sanctifying grace in the scriptures. Actual grace is more prevalent because, again, after the fall of Adam and Eve, we'll get to that next week, sanctifying grace is lost until the coming of Christ. But we're going to look at one specific example of actual grace in the scriptures that we've all heard before, that I don't know if we ever really thought about in the proper way in that regard. Saul. We've all heard of Saul, who later becomes known as Paul. Saul is a somebody in his world. Well-trained, well-taught. He's a Pharisee. He has a good profession. He's so powerful that he's received letters from the synagogue in Jerusalem, the head worship site of the entire Jewish people. Basically, the leaders of the Jewish people have given him letters saying, you can go and arrest Christians, confiscate their goods, throw them in jail, do whatever you want. This is what Saul's doing. And he himself says that. He's received letters to do this. He can do this. He's got power. And so he goes cruising on along with his bros to Damascus, right? They're all cruising along with their horses and everything's fine and wreaking havoc and arresting Christians and doing all the things for the old law that they need to do. We know what happens. Again, Paul himself tells us what happens. They're cruising on into Damascus, rolling in there, and bam, a bright light knocks him off his horse. A bright light knocks him off his horse, and it says he hears a voice from heaven speaking to him. Saul, why do you persecute me? And he has no idea who it is. He says, who are you? I'm Jesus, the one you're persecuting. But yet you notice Saul does not jump up right away and become a disciple or an apostle of Christ. He doesn't just immediately say, okay, I believe in you, let's go. No. He's blind for a couple days before he finally reached the decision. Actual grace has come and hit him square in a very violent way in this case, because God has offered him something. But Saul does not agree to it right away. Again, God's grace does not overpower or take control of our free will. I have to agree to let it in, and then it can assist me. So this happens to Saul. And again, do you ever notice that Saul's there with a whole group of dudes, and all of a sudden Saul's alone? It says also, Saul tells us that the others saw the light. That the others who were with him saw the light. They heard him speaking to somebody. And what do? Well, Saul, we're going to leave you in this apartment. Adios, we're out. They leave him there. His friends, his traveling companions, his brothers in arms, so to speak, put him in an apartment in Damascus and go. Why? If they saw a light and they knew something was happening, why did they still leave? Well, we can reasonably assume the main reason was they had different motivations for doing what they were doing. Saul, as misguided as his actions are, it's not justifying, it's not saying he's doing a good thing, rounding up Christians, confiscating their property, throwing them in jail, persecuting the church. That's a bad thing he's doing. There's no justifying that. But deep, deep down inside of him still exists, inside of Saul, an overpowering and burning desire to fulfill God's will. It's been distorted to what he's doing, but that desire, the purity of it's still way down inside of him. Even though it's, like I said, it's been disordered, disfigured, distorted by what he's doing now, the desire is still deep down inside of him. We can assume it was not with the others, which is why they got on their horses and left. They have things they got to do. Even though they saw something happen, they know something's going on, they just closed off to God's grace and they moved on their way. Saul, on the other hand, because of that desire that's still in him, like I said, as distorted as it is at the moment, still wants to serve God. And so when Christ hits him with this grace, again, he doesn't immediately jump up and run after Jesus. Again, actual grace is working, but again, Saul still has to make the decision. So for 3 days, it tells us, for 3 days, he's blind as a bat. It says scales form over his eyes and everything is pitch black to him. He can see nothing. And for 3 days, he does not eat, drink, or sleep. We know in those 3 days, God would have been speaking to him, obviously. But also we know something else is happening. Another actual grace is taking place. It says that after those 3 days, the Holy Spirit speaks to a leader of the community of Christians in Damascus, a man by the name of Ananias. And these Christians are persecuted already. They know nobody wants them around. But the Spirit tells Ananias, in Damascus is Saul, and you are to go to him. God offers Ananias a grace. But what grace? Can you think about that? To be part of one of the greatest and biggest conversion stories in history. This grace is offered to Ananias. Notice it does not say, and God continuously struck Ananias with lightning until he got up and left the house. No, Ananias at first does not want to go. He says, you mean Saul, the one who's been persecuting us and throwing our brothers in jail and destroying the church? You mean that Saul? You want me to go talk to him? God's actual grace is there. Ananias at first does not want to cooperate. Then God says, yes, that one, because I have a plan for him. God says, this is why I'm offering you this grace, because I have another grace I want to give to Saul. It says, then Ananias gets up and goes. Speaks to Saul about Jesus, tells him the gospel, and eventually baptizes him. And that's when the entire world changes and he becomes Paul. The actual grace was there. He didn't automatically jump at it, but he began to cooperate with it. Ananias, the actual grace was there. Took a moment, but he cooperated with it. And look what happens. The greatest conversion in the entire Bible takes place because two people are willing to cooperate with actual grace. The rest of Saul's party did not. They left. Another example of someone not cooperating with actual grace. We've all heard of him too, and I don't think we've ever thought of it in this regard. Pontius Pilate. Before he condemns Jesus to death, what happens? His wife comes to him and says, "Do not condemn this innocent man. I had a dream about him, and I suffered much because of him. Do not do this." Actual grace. God comes and offers this grace to Pontius Pilate's wife, says, "This is what you need to do with this grace. Go to this person. The grace is there for him too." And we know what happens. Pontius Pilate wavers, and he thinks, release this man or deal with the rebellion of the Jews. And we know what he chose. He chose to refuse the grace God offered and give Christ over to crucifixion. So again, cooperating or not cooperating with that actual grace entirely depends upon my free will. Do I want it or not? Do I want to cooperate with it or not? To put it in perspective, actual grace is a grace that God offers each one of us every single day. It's not impossible to attain. It's not, you have to go to the moon and then you'll find some come back, or walk on water and God will give you grace, then you'll find. Actual grace is available to each one of us every single day, and God makes it very easy for us to attain because he wants us to draw to him. He wants us to come to him. He wants us to be saved. So one concrete way, let's say, hypothetical, John Smith is a person I don't like. And he gets on my nerves because he just doesn't shut up ever. And he always knows better. And he always has done the best. And always has the greatest. And I don't like John Smith too much. And I'm going to tell John Smith one day what I really think of him. And it's not something I'm going to say in church because it's bad. In the common tongue, I'm going to cuss out John Smith because John Smith deserves it. And it happens. I run into John Smith. And we start talking. He starts telling me about something I really don't care about. I don't want to hear it. And complaining and all these other things. And I'm about to tell John Smith, you know what? This is what I think of you. But there's that second where all of a sudden that actual grace comes along and says, number one, is that the right thing to do? Is it the right thing to do? Number two, is this going to help you or that person practice virtue? Number three, could you not be more patient and forgiving and compassionate with someone, as God says, as I am with you every single day? And then he says, make a decision. I can still tell John Smith what I really think of him, but I can be patient and humble enough to let it go. Another example, I have to use this one a lot. Going into the store or the gas station. You hold the door open for somebody. We've talked about this before and how much this gets under my skin. You hold it up, and some people are cultured enough to say, thank you. You're welcome. Have a wonderful day. Other times you are a piece of furniture to somebody. You're a door holder opener. They don't even acknowledge you. And I'm not going to lie, I have this temptation all the time to go back in there, physically remove that person, possibly shut their head the door a few times, and tell them this is why you should be grateful when somebody opens the door for you, because that could happen to you. It's happened. I mean, I've had that temptation. It happens all the time. Or I want to say something. Oh, Lord. Oh, the biting of the tongue. I almost bit it off the other day, I think. Because somebody just walks by you, or they're standing right in your way, and you're like, excuse me. Excuse me. Nothing. And again, the actual grace is there in those situations too. That's why I haven't done that to anybody recently. The grace is there because the good Lord, you're holding the door and you feel that urge, that temptation. You need to let these people know what they're doing wrong because it's wrong. I'm not saying what they're doing is right. It's wrong. God's not going to say they're doing a good thing. They're doing a bad thing. Absolutely. Nobody should act like that. The actual grace comes along though and says again, is what the temptation telling you to do, is that the right thing to do? Is that the good thing to do? And thirdly, what is your real motivation for doing this in the first place? That's the question that gets me every time. Why are you really doing this? You want people to be ingratiated to you? You want people to have to thank you? You want people to have to look at you as somebody special at the moment? Is that why you're doing it in the first place? And the good Lord says, Or would you rather do it because you know it's the right thing to do and you want to do it out of love for me? The actual grace is there again. I can cooperate with either one. I can slam their head in the door. I'm free to do that. Or I can let it go, offer it to God, and go on my way. That I did a good thing, not because of what someone else can give me for it, but because I know it was the best thing I did to serve God in that little tiny instance in my life. It's the least I could offer to Him as cooperation. So, actual grace works kind of in those little concrete ways every day God offers them to us. We should probably end now. So, next week we'll deal with sanctifying grace to kind of keep on cruising here. But again, that gives us a good idea of where we're starting from here.